Hi there, my name is Vic Veer. I'm an ENT consultant surgeon working for the NHS. And in this video, I want to talk to you about decongestant nasal sprays. In particular, I've got Otrivine and Sudafed, and they're the most common ones that you'll see. I'm going to tell you how they work, what they're useful for, and the dangers behind using these for more than a week. So the way decongestant nasal sprays work is that when they go into your nose and they touch the lining of your nose, they constrict the blood vessels going to the lining of your nose. Now this is great because what happens is that the blood flow stops going to your nose, which means that there's no blood swelling up your nose and everything shrinks down so you can breathe suddenly within about 15 minutes. Typically the effect lasts for about 8 hours. If you only use it for a few days, it's relatively harmless. So these sprays are particularly useful for if you've got a cold or something like that. You just want to be able to breathe through your nose and get a proper night's sleep. Or if you're about to give a speech or go to a meeting or go to a restaurant or something, you don't want to look all stuffy in front of your friends or in front of your colleagues. It might be useful for that period then. Now the problem with these sprays is that there are some dangers if you use them for too long. Typically I would say don't use them for more than 5 to 7 days, because if you do, you run the risk of getting something known as rhinitis medicamentosa. So if you remember decongestant sprays like Otrivine, what happens is that it stops the blood flow going to the nose. So areas like the cartilage and the other areas of the nose lose oxygen and nutrients, which is fine for the short term, but if you keep using it for over a week or something, the area becomes very starved of oxygen and nutrients. So as soon as the effect of the drug wears off in a few hours, the body goes, oh my God, get some nutrients down there quickly, pour as much blood into it as possible. Then you get a sudden rebound swelling inside your nose and you're almost more blocked up than you were beforehand. This is the body trying to repair the damage that's been caused by not having a blood supply for such a long time. The problem is that most people feel, oh my God, I'm really blocked up again. I must still have the flu or a cold or something. And they reach for it again and start spraying it up again. And then you get into this vicious cycle where you're constantly having to use it. The effective time for these sprays becomes shorter and shorter. So you find that instead of just using it maybe once or twice a day, you need to use it every 5, 4, maybe 1 hour just to keep your nose unblocked. The long-term effect of using these drugs is that your nose becomes so nutrient and oxygen deplete that you start to get signs and symptoms of people who use cocaine for too long. I've seen people with a hole in the middle line partition of your nose, otherwise known as the septum, a septal perforation. And other things that can happen is that the outside part of your nose can stick to the midline partition of your nose. So the outside wall attaches to the septum, so you're sort of stuck like this. Because all that's happening is that an area of your nose is so desperate for oxygen that it grabs another part of the nose and sticks onto it to try and suck the oxygen off from that area. And that's known as an adhesion. Obviously, if your nose is attached here and attached here, you're never going to get any airway back, and no matter how much you spray, it's not going to get better. Now, if you lose an awful lot of the septal cartilage, this area here supports the tip of your nose and also this area here. So just like cocaine addicts, what you'll end up with is a dip here. So your nose starts collapsing or you lose the structure of your nose. Now this is very rare and quite a severe long-term problem, but I do see people who've been using these drugs for a very long time, even though it says on the packaging, don't use for more than 7 days. So I just want to hammer home that point. Please don't use decongestants for more than 7 days. It can ruin your nose in the long term. Now the question you may be asking now is, how do I get off this? I've been stuck on this for ages. I've got rhinitis medicamentosa. What do I do about it? Unfortunately, if you've been using this for a long time, it's going to be very hard for you to come off them. And there will be a very difficult period when you're in between coming off them and moving on to the other sprays. The problem with other sprays, particularly steroid sprays, that if I sprayed fluticasone propionate up my nose now, it'll take about 4 days for you to really start feeling that effect. It's not as quick as Otrivine, which takes 10-15 minutes. But the idea is you get a little dose every day and it builds up to the point where you start plateauing off and you get the same effect you would with the Otrivine. You have to keep going with it. You can't stop and start it. I've got a video on how to use nasal sprays properly and I'll leave a link here somewhere. And that might help you come off the decongestants. My advice would be to see an ENT surgeon, get them to look up your nose and try and work out if you've got a deviated septum, if you've got large turbinates or some other problem that may be causing your nasal obstruction, and make a plan of how to get off these decongestants and deal with your nasal obstruction. There are an awful lot of operations you can do, such as septoplasty or turbinate reduction, to help people with a blocked nose. A lot of people would shy away from doing an operation, particularly on the septum, if you've been using decongestants for a long time, because the operation is on the cartilage and the bones within your nose, and if they're starved of oxygen, they're not going to heal very well. It's probably best to come off the decongestants and move on to another spray, such as fluticasone propionate or something like that. I'm going to leave a few other links to these videos that are on my channel that will help you more to deal with your nasal obstruction, and I hope you find those useful as well as this one. Thank you very much for watching.